welcome back to Killer Stories. I don't know if you remember me, but I'm your host, Bobby Holmes. The debut of Season 11 has been a long time coming. So many of you have reached out to let me know how much you enjoy and miss new Killer Stories content. Even Stuart Blues of British Murders has told me on multiple occasions his listeners who have dabbled into my show are wondering where the heck I am. Rest assured, I am fine and doing well. I have just been hella busy. Last September, I started a new job that allowed me to work from home, which was amazing, but I went from working 4 days a week to 5. Then came summer, and my husband and I decided, since I work from home, that we would save money in childcare and keep my 7-year-old at home with me, which means 0 free time. I know you work from home parents feel me. Don't get me wrong, I love him to pieces and would not trade that time for anything, but it did not leave me any time to work on the show. This August, I made another career change, which includes some travel. Flight time, as well as peaceful evenings in a hotel, has given me the opportunity to dive back into the podcast world. Having said that, let's get started with Season 11, Episode 1, The Lululemon Murder. I work out regularly at a bar studio. Shout out Bar Forte Kaysville. All my bar friends know about my podcast and my true crime obsession. As I'm sure most of you are aware, Lululemon is a very popular athletic wear company. One day at class, a friend sporting a pair of Lululemon leggings asked me if I had heard of the murder that happened in one of their stores. I'm like, girl, of course I have. I promised to cover it so they could get all the details. Let's begin with a little background on our victim, Jayna Murray. In March of 2011, Jayna was about to get her master's degree in business administration. The past 2 years, she had worked at Lululemon in Bethesda, Maryland, a suburb of Washington, D.C. She had moved up to a managerial position. Jayna was a fitness junkie and fit right in working at Lululemon. Not just because they sell amazing athletic wear, but she was impressed by their business model. In fact, she was writing her thesis on the company and ironically wanted to implement a crisis plan to be used by staff in case of an emergency. On the day of her murder, Jayna showed up to work 2 hours early. Lululemon was next door to the Apple store and the iPad 2 had just been released, which means lines out the door and heavier than normal foot traffic. She sat in the back and prepared for her upcoming shift, but also tied up any loose ends of her schoolwork. She wanted to make sure it was completed before the weekend. Her long-distance boyfriend would be visiting from Seattle the next day. Jayna's plan was to graduate with her master's degree, move to Seattle, and hopefully get a job at Lululemon's headquarters. And she had a good shot because they were very impressed with her ideas mapped out in her thesis. Jayna typically did not work on Fridays, but she had traded shifts with a coworker. As she finished her schoolwork, that coworker brought Jayna a bottle of wine as a thank you for covering her shift. 30-year-old Jayna Murray was managing the store alongside coworker Brittany Norwood, aged 29. There were typically 3 people on duty at the store, but the third person had called in sick. And even though it was bound to get busy, Jayna felt the 2 of them would handle things just fine. The store closed at 9 p.m. As the manager on duty, it was Jayna's job to close up and set the alarm before leaving for the night. Because the iPad 2 had just released, the Apple store stayed open later than usual. Around 10 p.m., when the last Apple employees were closing up, a female worker heard 2 people arguing and a loud banging sound. She asked the store manager to help her investigate the disturbance. As she put her ear against the wall, she realized it was coming from the Lululemon store next door. Along with the banging, she now heard grunting and a female scream. She asked her manager if she should call the police, and his response? Nah, it's probably just drama. This case just proves it is better to be safe than sorry. If you hear or see something, say something. You could very well save someone's life. Worst case scenario, the police look into it and relay back to you that it is indeed just drama. No harm done. But it was more than just drama happening next door. What they heard was Jayna Murray fighting for her life. Saturday morning at 8 a.m., the Lululemon store owner, Rachel, approached the store and grabbed her keys to unlock the front door. Except the door wasn't locked. Rachel knew Jayna was the manager on duty the night before, and this was totally out of character for her. Jayna had worked there for 2 years and proved to be extremely responsible. As she entered the store, Rachel quickly realized something was wrong. As she sidestepped around piles of clothes, Rachel suddenly froze. There on the floor in front of her was a bloody shoe print. She turned around and bolted out the front door to call 911. While outside, she saw a man sitting on a bench who was waiting for the Apple store to open. She asked if he had seen anyone come in or out of the Lululemon store. He had not. Rachel asked this man, who was named Ryan, to walk back inside the store with her to investigate further. She was terrified that whoever turned the store upside down and left the bloody shoe print could still be inside. Rachel and Ryan walked inside the store and called out, asking if anyone was there. There was no response. Together, they walked towards the back room. Ryan turned the doorknob and attempted to push it open, but something was blocking it. He was able to push it open just enough to poke his head inside. He saw a woman's body lying face down on the ground in a pool of blood. She had rope tied around her neck and a red toolbox lying on her back. Multiple blood-soaked tools and other items were scattered on the ground around her. Blood could be seen splattered 3/4 of the way up the walls. Both Rachel and Ryan had seen enough. It was time to get out of there and wait for police to arrive. On their way out, Ryan noticed a bathroom door ajar. On the floor was a set of legs bound at the ankles with zip ties. There was a second victim. As he inched closer, he could see her arms were held above her head and also bound at the wrists. Beside her body on the ground was a bloodied rock. Police were on the scene within minutes of this gruesome discovery. They rushed to the back room and confirmed the woman, 30-year-old Jayna Murray, was deceased and had been for a while. The second woman, 29-year-old Brittany Norwood, had a pulse and was still breathing. EMS moved quickly to cut the zip ties and get Brittany medical attention. It seemed as if this could have been a robbery gone terribly wrong. The register was opened and emptied, along with 3 small safes in the back of the store. However, Jayna was brutally beaten. I would go as far as saying this was overkill. Overkill in a forensic medicine world is a specific type of homicide where the number of inflicted injuries greatly surpasses the number of fatal ones. So if this was a burglary gone wrong, you'd think they would just kill Jayna quick and get out. This crime seemed to have emotion behind it, meaning the killer likely had a connection to the victim. Brittany was also attacked, but not with the same severity as Jayna. Once she regained consciousness, Brittany was able to tell investigators what happened. Lululemon closed at 9 p.m. the night prior. At 9:45, Jayna locked the doors and both women left for the night. Brittany walked away and realized she had left her wallet in the store. She didn't have keys, so she called Jayna in hopes she could return and let her back inside. When Brittany called Jayna, she told her she coincidentally left her laptop behind and she would meet her back at the store. But once inside, Brittany was not able to find her wallet anywhere. Both her and Jayna searched for over 10 minutes before finally giving up. Jayna graciously gave Brittany her Metro card so that she was able to get home that night. The women made a grave mistake in not locking the door behind them. A man dressed in all black, including a ski mask, snuck inside and hid behind a rack of clothes. As Jayna walked past him, the man lunged out, hitting her over the head with a pipe. A second man suddenly appeared and grabbed Brittany by the hair and put a knife to her neck, threatening to kill her if she resisted. Jayna was taken to the back room while Brittany did what she was told and walked with the second man to the bathroom. Brittany said the second man cut her yoga pants open from the crotch and raped her. He used racial slurs and called her a dirty slut. She reported being assaulted with a coat hanger. During the attack, Brittany was hit over the head with a rock, which is what caused her to lose consciousness. She was going in and out. She reports hearing Jayna screaming in the back room. Then she heard people in the store next door, the Apple store. Brittany told police she had prayed that they heard Jayna and would call police. She was too afraid to call out for help due to the threats given by the two men. One man forced Brittany to open the register and all three safes. At this time, they were both leaving bloodied footprints around the store. One, a size 7.5 New Balance shoe belonging to Brittany, and the other, a size 14 Reebok, which was presumed to be the man who attacked and raped Brittany. Brittany says she must have blacked out because the only thing she could remember after this was being taken away in the ambulance. Brittany described her attackers as both being a medium build, but one man was much taller than the other. Both wore black pants, shirt, ski mask, and gloves. She guessed they were both white American men, but that was purely based on their voices and the racial slurs. She wasn't able to see their faces. Brittany sobbed and explained she felt like this was her fault. She had forgotten her wallet, and that was the only reason they were back at the store. It was nearly 50 minutes into this interview before Brittany asked about Jayna. She said to the investigators, "Is my friend okay?" And that's when they broke the news. No, Jayna was not okay. Investigators interviewed the workers from the Apple store that overheard the commotion the night before. The woman who wanted to call police, but didn't, was beside herself with grief, knowing that two women were brutally attacked and one was killed. She felt awful that she could have done something to stop it. They asked for any other witnesses to come forward with information, but Brittany was the only witness to the crime. Unfortunately, this Lululemon store did not have any cameras inside or outside of the store, but Apple did have cameras that was facing their back door. The cameras picked up two men dressed head to toe in black around 11 p.m. Just like Brittany had described, one man was shorter than the other. The shorter man held a phone to his ear, while the taller man had what looked like a ski mask rolled up over his head and was carrying a black backpack over one shoulder. But unfortunately, it was too dark to make out their faces on the footage. As I stated earlier, Brittany did not have a car. She was planning on taking the metro home that night. Strangely, Jayna's car was discovered 3 blocks away from Lululemon. It was really late and there was plenty of parking right near the store. It would make no sense to park that far away and walk. This was perplexing to investigators. A security guard patrolling the shopping center around 12:30 a.m. made a mental note of a vehicle because there was someone in the driver's seat with the headlights on. He didn't think anything of it. No laws were being broken, but 2 hours later, around 2:30 a.m., the officer did another round and the headlights were still on. He couldn't tell if someone was in the car or not, but he left without further investigation. Seems weird to me. I'm sure if I was in a parking lot for hours in the middle of the night with my lights on, I would be getting a knock on my window asking what I'm doing. 3:30 a.m., he patrolled again, and the car was still in the same spot, but the lights were now off. If the attack happened around 9:45 to 10 p.m., who was in Jayna's car at 12:30 and possibly 2:30? If it was the suspect, robbery/rapist, why? Typically, you get what you need and flee the scene. The whole thing just seemed suspicious. Brittany's injuries were treated and she was released from the hospital. Her parents and siblings jumped on an airplane and rushed to be by her side while she recovered. They were so worried about her, and not just for her physical health, she was lucky to have survived, but her mental state as well. Brittany revealed to police that she was terrified the two men were going to come after her again. While conducting the robbery, they went through her bag and found pieces of mail with her name and address on it. They had threatened to track her down and kill her. Police said with this case being front page news, they doubted the men would insert themselves again. But she should be aware of her surroundings and contact police with any concerns. People working at the shopping center suggested investigators to look into a local, Keith Lockard. He had a criminal history of assault as well as robbery. Keith favored one specific bar and was pretty much a daily customer. But oddly, Keith did not come in on that Friday or Saturday. On that Friday, a witness placed Keith walking outside of the Lululemon store with two other unidentified men. He had a backpack slung over his shoulder, just like the man seen on camera leaving the store. The witness was familiar with Keith and stated they had never seen him carry a backpack before. When police tracked Keith down, he was in a hospital being treated for injuries that fit a physical altercation. He had cuts to his face and dried blood on his shirt. In the eyes of the investigators, these injuries could be from Jayna and or Brittany defending themselves. But instead of going to a local hospital in Bethesda, he went to a neighboring city to seek medical attention, perhaps to avoid being connected to the crime. Things were not looking good for Keith Lockard. Once released from the hospital, he was taken to the station to be questioned. To paint a picture, Keith had a schizophrenic disorder that he treated with medication, or at least was supposed to. Investigators reported he seemed very confused and disoriented while giving his statement. Keith admitted to being in the area the night of the murder, but denied involvement. He claims his injuries were from two men, quote, one short Spanish guy and one tall African American guy. He didn't know who they were, but had heard about them. Word on the town was the two men were robbing local stores at night. He claimed to see them follow Jayna and Brittany into the Lululemon store. He said, "I saw them cut her. I saw it with my own eyes." But Keith's story changed a few times during the interview. After claiming seeing the two men with his own eyes, he then said he saw a gang of young teens skateboarding out of the store. Just zoom straight out of the store. The blood on his shirt was tested and confirmed to be his own. Because his blood was splattered on his shirt, but zero physical evidence that Keith was at the crime scene, and his wishy-washy recount of events, he was ruled out as a suspect. Jayna's autopsy revealed that she was severely beaten, so much that the examiner stated it looked more like she had been in a motorcycle accident. Hundreds of lacerations covered her body, and her face was so disfigured it left her unrecognizable. There were 331 individual wounds that indicated bludgeoning and stabbing. 152 were to her head, resulting in 13 skull fractures. The fatal injury was a 1-inch stab wound at the base of her neck. The items used in this attack were scattered on the floor around her, which included a metal bar, a wrench, a hammer, a box cutter, an X-Acto knife, a metal display hook, and a Buddha statue. These robbers sure got creative with their choice of weapons. Jayna's leggings were cut open at the crotch just like Brittany's. Medical personnel conducted a rape kit on both Jayna and Brittany. Brittany had smaller lacerations on the front side of her body, on her chest, stomach, and legs. Shards of glass were stuck in her back. Her hands had defensive wounds, and a larger wound was found on her forehead, presumably from the rock lying next to her on the ground. They found salivary DNA and bite marks on the zip ties used to bind Brittany's wrists and ankles. When police and EMS arrived, she had her arms above her head, which was odd. They weren't tied behind her back. She could have lowered them. Brittany's brother, Chris, asked to speak to the police in private. He asked why they thought Brittany had survived with minor injuries while Jayna was so severely beaten and brutally murdered. Brittany told investigators she believed the reason she was spared by her attacker was because he told her she was, quote, fun to fuck. Chris noted to police that Brittany was a very secretive person, perhaps indicating that he didn't fully trust her. When the rape kit results were in, investigators were surprised to find out that neither girl was raped or sexually assaulted in any way, definitely not with a coat hanger, as Brittany had claimed. The two men seen on CCTV leaving the rear of the store were tracked down. It turned out they worked in a nearby restaurant kitchen and were hurrying into work at that time. They were interviewed and ruled out as suspects. Meanwhile, an investigation continued at the crime scene. Something that wasn't adding up was the bloody shoe prints. Why were the only prints found Brittany's size 7.5 New Balance and one pair of size 14 Reeboks? Where were the prints from the second perpetrator? And why were the prints only found inside the store? There were no bloody footprints found outside the front or rear doors of the store. Also, the pattern left by the Reeboks did not coincide with a normal walking movement. While searching the store, a pair of shoes were found inside of a drawer, size 14 Reeboks. They were clean, but the print was an exact match to what was found at the scene. The 7.5 New Balance bloody shoe prints ended at the sink in the bathroom. From the sink to the drawer where the other shoes were found, they found a path of small splotches of blood. These marks were caused by shoelaces touching the floor with each step. It was more of a diluted blood splotch, meaning someone had attempted to wash their shoes. The investigator came to the conclusion the footprints never left the store because the killer never left the store. 6 days after the murder, Brittany was called back into the station by investigators to give samples of her DNA, which she gave willingly with an anything-to-help attitude. She was taken into an interview room and told that the people who were coming to collect her DNA were running late, discreetly easing into further questioning. While they waited, they asked Brittany to go through the night's events one more time. After telling the same story, police asked Brittany if she had ever been in Jayna's car. She paused and replied no. They had caught her in a lie. There was evidence of blood belonging to both Jayna and Brittany found on the stick shift, steering wheel, and door handle. In the back seat was a black hat with Brittany's blood on the inner rim. The area matched up exactly with her forehead wound. Was she the person the security guard saw inside Jayna's car? Not only that, but some of Brittany's blood was found on Jayna's body. Brittany initially stated she didn't see Jayna again once they were separated. Now, she conveniently remembered her attacker forced her to lay on top of Jayna's dead body as a kind of psychological torture. This is just getting more and more bizarre. After questioning Brittany, investigators had a new top suspect, but apparently there wasn't enough evidence to arrest her at that time. I don't know, I feel like there's plenty of evidence. The next day, Brittany's brother Chris phoned the police station. He said Brittany had more she wanted to talk about and would be coming back in. Both Chris and another one of her sisters stood by her side as she entered the station. Brittany admitted to holding something back from them because she was afraid. In the middle of the attack, her assailant forced her outside to move Jayna's car. They didn't say why, only that if she tried to get help while outside, she could, quote, consider herself dead. She saw the security guard, but was frightened. The assailants knew where she lived, and if she did make it out alive, she thought they would just track her down and kill her. The fact that she kept this part out of her initial story makes no sense. She was obviously fabricating it to explain why her blood was found in Jayna's car. Investigators continued to ask questions, and Brittany continued to lie. They finally called Brittany's brother and sister into the room before stating, Brittany killed Jayna. Then they put her under arrest and charged her with first-degree murder. Before I tell you what really happened that night, I need to fill you in on Brittany Norwood and her history. Brittany excelled in school and was even better on the soccer field. She received a scholarship for soccer and was given the title of MVP. While at college, she studied sociology and psychology in hopes of becoming a social worker. But her dreams came to an end when she was expelled. Brittany was caught stealing items from her roommate and other friends. She admitted to this and took responsibility, but Brittany never told her family, and they believed she had graduated with honors. Sadly, she didn't learn her lesson. Brittany once stole $300 from her sister's purse and denied it adamantly when confronted. Brittany was later hired at an upscale hotel near the White House. She was a hard worker and was even awarded Employee of the Quarter. In 2007, Brittany broke up with her boyfriend but kept the keys to his place. Nearly a year after their split, Brittany broke into his home and stole things like jewelry and blank checks. The ex figured out it was Brittany and filed a restraining order. She violated the restraining order within weeks, but nothing was ever done about it. Honestly, what is the point of a restraining order then? They never seem to be taken seriously. Brittany decided on a career change as a personal trainer, which led her to apply at Lululemon. But this was actually in Georgetown, not Bethesda. It didn't take long before Brittany was once again accused of stealing, this time money straight from the register. Her manager tried to fire her, but Brittany fought the claims, and the higher-ups at Lululemon decided against firing her. Instead, they just transferred her to the Bethesda location. Surely this will fix the problem. Once again, items at the store started to go missing. The store owner reviewed the schedule and realized it happened just about every shift Brittany worked. The location managers met and tried to figure out what was the best course of action. They were aware of the accusations from the Georgetown location, and this time they needed to either catch her red-handed or somehow get her to confess. They thought the best thing to do is just announce to all staff that someone has been stealing from the store and just see how it plays out. The day of the murder, Jayna commented to other coworkers, "I'm closing with the thief tonight. Do you think I will catch her?" Well, that's exactly what happened. Before leaving for the night, Jayna asked Brittany to open her bag. Inside were a pair of leggings with the tags still attached. Brittany swore to Jayna that she bought them with her employee discount earlier that day. This was easy enough to prove, but everything was shut down for the night. Jayna said they would sort it out the next day. Jayna locked the store doors, and as she walked to her car, she called the employee who was working earlier that day. She had not sold leggings to Brittany. Jayna then called to fill in her superior, Rachel. Rachel said now that Brittany was caught red-handed, she would plan to fire her the next day. When Jayna hung up the call with Rachel, her phone rang again. It was Brittany. Brittany explained to Jayna that she left her wallet and asked to meet her back at Lululemon and unlock the door for her. Once inside, it isn't exactly known what was said between the two women, as Brittany hasn't shared those details. What we do know is that Brittany hit Jayna in the back of the head with a foot-long metal bar. Jayna attempted to fight back, but was stunned by the initial blow. As I stated earlier, the vicious attack entailed the use of multiple weapons. Even in cases where there are 20, maybe 30 strikes is considered overkill. Can you imagine over 300? The judge in this case said he attempted to reenact 331 blows by, lightly, punching his fist into his kitchen table. It took over 8 minutes. Brittany attacked with hatred and rage. Once Jayna was dead, Brittany grabbed the keys from her purse and went outside to move her car. It was parked right outside, and she was afraid it would bring attention if she left it. She put on a hat to hide her wounds and be more discreet. Brittany parked the car 3 blocks away. This was around 12:30 a.m. when the security guard drove past without stopping. Brittany nonchalantly walked the 3 blocks back to the store and staged the scene. She knocked over mannequins, the TV, and racks of clothing. She stepped in blood and walked to the safe and cash register. Then she put on the size 14 Reeboks and walked in the same pattern. Then she washed both pairs of shoes in the sink and returned the Reeboks to the drawer. These shoes were kept on hand for male customers to try on with pants and see if an in-store alteration is needed. Brittany then cut open the crotch of both her pants and Jayna's to indicate a sexual assault. This to me is so stupid. I mean, I know leggings can fit tightly, but wouldn't it be so much easier for an attacker to just pull them down versus grabbing a knife and cutting open the crotch? After cutting the leggings, Brittany inflicted wounds on herself. She put zip ties around her ankles and wrists, pulling them tight with her teeth. She rolled on her side and waited for someone to stumble upon the scene, which happened to be the store owner, Rachel, when she arrived the next morning. Brittany pretended to be unconscious and played the part of a defenseless victim. Brittany's arrest just so happened to be the same day as Jayna's funeral. A detective called the Murrays while they were driving to the service and informed them they had arrested Brittany Norwood. They were in complete shock, along with the rest of Brittany's family. At a later date, Jayna's family met with the defense team to see if they would accept a plea deal and avoid going to trial. I get that no one wants to sit through disturbing evidence of a murdered loved one, but this plea was absurd. Brittany would serve 15 years and then be eligible for parole. I find it insulting they even proposed this. Brittany is in her 20s. If she were released after 15 years, she would still live the majority of her life a free woman. Do you know who will never get that opportunity? Jayna Murray. Jayna's parents refused the plea deal, and a trial was set. Brittany admitted to killing Jayna, but her defense team was going for a ruling of second-degree murder, claiming a fight broke out and it was not planned. Brittany called her back to the store and delivered over 300 blows to Jayna. In no way is that second-degree murder. That is murder in the first degree, and after a short 20-minute deliberation, the jury agreed. Brittany Norwood was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Brittany appealed her conviction, stating her interviews should not have been admissible in court because she was never read her Miranda rights. You were supposedly a victim. Miranda rights do not apply in that situation. She was deceitful. Her appeal was obviously denied, which means Brittany Norwood will spend the rest of her natural life in prison. The Lululemon store where Jayna was killed added a special memorial in her honor, a colorful stained glass window above the front entrance that says "Love" in red. It served as a reminder of what a wonderful person Jayna was for nearly 7 years following her death. In 2017, the Lululemon in Bethesda moved locations and decided against taking the stained glass memorial with them, stating, quote, "It wouldn't go with the new decor." Instead, they donated it to the Murray family, and they were grateful and very touched by the gesture. It is absolutely heartbreaking that Brittany found it necessary to take Jayna's life over a pair of stolen leggings. I have heard this case many times, and it truly blows my mind every time. That's it for today's story. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you are listening on YouTube, you can leave a comment below. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Killer Stories Podcast. Not really interacting on Twitter or X anymore. I have yet to make an account for the podcast on Threads, maybe soon. Continue sending your story suggestions to KillerStoriesPodcast@gmail.com. To help boost the show back up, I would greatly appreciate any reviews left on Apple Podcast and/or a star rating on Spotify. Speaking of reviews, here is a 5-star review left by listener Christine120 titled, "Just Facts, Good for Any Time of Day." Christine says, "Honestly love this podcast. It's a good listen while driving to work or relaxing. She is so soothing and relaxing, and her research is solid. I feel like although she is opinionated, it doesn't alter the facts of the story." Very true. I do get a little heated at times, but I'm so glad you enjoy the show. Thanks, Christine. Due to my schedule, I'm going to try my hardest to upload an episode bi-weekly, but don't hold me to that. I am allowing myself some grace and just put out content as I am able. It feels good to be back. As always, thanks so much for listening. Until next time, this has been a killer story.